Welcome to today's episode of Sports Scandals, where I document and narrate stories about your favorite players of all time from yesteryear and the biggest rumor stories and scandals about them that y'all may have never heard of, before social media. I don't know if all of these scandals and rumors are true. I'm just putting stories out in the air so that everybody can know about them. On our fourth episode, we got the man who could score the ball with his eyes closed, the Texas Massacre, Bernard King. Let's do it.
I'm off ahead, so I guess I'm labeled a headhunter. Throw me on the verse and I promise you'll probably last longer. Moving through the masses, I'm crashing the main circuit. Too bad cause I had the plans to be modest, remain closer.
Bernard King was born the second oldest of 6 siblings on December 4th, 1956 in Fort Greene Whitman Projects, Brooklyn, New York. His parents, Thomas and Thelma King, were not the greatest of parents when it came to showing love and affection, and Bernard was often beaten by his mother. The neighborhood they grew up in was rough, drug-infested, and a high crime rate. So Bernard sought to escape these harsh conditions by picking up a basketball. As a kid, he was exposed to a lot of bullying at school because he was a tall, awkward kid. But the abuse at home is what really tormented him mentally throughout his entire career. He first fell in love with basketball at the age of 8 when, after so many tries, the tall, weird kid with the funny haircut was able to put the ball in the basket for the first time. Back at home, he was never able to discuss anything with his parents, especially his father. If Bernard ever had an issue, no matter what it may be, his dad would just tell him to take it to the back room and forget about it. He simply just didn't want to hear it. That, unfortunately, became a very dark place for him and extended out to him not being able to open up to anyone as he got older. With his parents so deep into religion, that was the only thing they truly cared about. There was no laughter, no warmth, no smiling together, and no happiness. The only time they could get a sliver of openness was when their father, Thomas, was not there. When he got home, any bouts of fun ceased. His father went to church 7 days a week and never wavered. On Sundays, Bernard and his siblings went to church, and when they got home, they couldn't go outside. No TVs, no toys, nothing. The household was very rigid and lends itself to being a part of the reason Bernard ended up the way that he became. But this cold atmosphere that his father created translated to his mother as well. She never told him that she loved him, never hugged him, and he could never talk to her about anything. For a kid, that is torture and truly sad to hear. His mother would beat him mercilessly with brooms, straps, whatever she could get her hands on, most of the time for no reason. She would even force him to strip down to no clothes and beat him. Again, this has had a great effect on him as he got older, and we will touch on that a little later in the story. Let's keep going. With no outlet to express his emotions, he let it out on the basketball court. Mind you, this was New York in the 60s and 70s, so there was no shortage of courts to hoop at. By the time high school rolled around, Bernard was the best player on his team and was eventually averaging 26 points a game and grabbing 28 rebounds a game. He was a stud and was really starting to hit his stride as a great hooper. His senior year, he dominated the school year in tournaments throughout the Northeast of the U.S., earning him a basketball scholarship to the University of Tennessee. He didn't even tell his parents about the recruitment process or barely anything about the school at all because he knew they wouldn't care. Bernard was just the third black basketball player in the history at that time to play for the Volunteers, and that was due to the fact that major colleges shied away from bringing in inner city kids because of the stigma attached to them of them only being street ballers who couldn't translate the game to the hardwood. In the very first game of the year, at just 17 years old, Bernard scored 42 points and grabbed 15 rebounds in just 30 minutes of play. Absolutely insane, and his presence had been felt throughout the country. His freshman year was nothing short of spectacular, and he averaged about 27 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, and made all SEC first team and won SEC Player of the Year. Y'all know what time it is. Here's where things get weird. Following his dominant freshman year, his coach calls him into his office to talk to him about a pretty serious matter. It had to do with the police. The chief of police told the coach that there are people on his staff that, and I quote, don't like that uppity N-word. Yes, those were his exact words according to Bernard. Then he goes on to say that the police are out to get Bernard and that there is nothing that he can do about it. Mind you, this was during the 70s in the South, so things were quite ugly when it came to racism and discrimination at the time. Earlier that year, Bernard had a threat made on his life too. His coach usually would offer him some words of encouragement or advice, but he didn't this time. This is also the start of Bernard's alcohol and drug addiction. He tried to numb the pain of what he was experiencing, and this was his solution. But his college days got much worse from here though. Let's continue. Shortly after, he was loaned an old beat-up red Pontiac that allowed him to be mobile and drive around while on campus during the summer, going into sophomore year. The warnings that his coach gave him about the police started right away. The police harassed him constantly with minor traffic stops, but Bernard didn't make matters easy for himself because he was always self-medicating with alcohol and drugs because he was traumatized. He was completely closed off and losing his mind from all the different encounters. Eventually, he would also be stopped for minor possession of marijuana in his car. But again, things would get much, much worse for Mr. King. His sophomore year, he had another dominant season and finished averaging 25 points a game and 13 rebounds a game and became a consensus All-American. Junior year, it was more of the same from his sophomore, dominating the competition. But hold on, before we move on, we got some things to discuss. This man racked up arrests like it was going out of style in Tennessee, and it was all in a very short time span. I stated earlier that he was arrested for marijuana and minor traffic offenses, but he was arrested on 4 traffic offenses and twice arrested for marijuana. Then he broke into a break room on campus and stole a TV. Why? He didn't have an explanation. He tells his coach that he blew it and that he was sorry. One issue that I personally have is that during an interview, his coach said that Bernard thinks that the police are after him for some odd reason. But after his freshman year, as you recall, his coach told him that the police would be after him, per Bernard. Now, it's either Bernard King embellished this sit down with the coach, or the coach was throwing Bernard under the bus and downplaying what he knew was going on campus. I mean, his own lawyer said that the cops were not harassing him, so who knows what the heck was really going on back then. Y'all tell me what you think. 2 weeks after being arrested for stealing the TV, a woman complained that King tried to break into her apartment, so he was charged with possession of marijuana, again, prowling, and resisting arrest. And this was after he got drafted and had hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting for him to sign on the dotted line. Remember, he was heavy into alcohol at this time. Heavy. So I personally am almost 100% certain that this had a lot to do with the issues that he had going on. Whether that is honestly and truly the case, I can't 100% say so, but this dude was on a rampage, it seems. Bernard King was drafted number 7 overall to the New York Nets in the 1977 NBA draft. This was the year that the ABA and the NBA merged, and the Nets were one of the teams that were brought over from the ABA, becoming the New Jersey Nets. In just the first season as a Net, he averaged 24.2 points a game, 9.5 rebounds a game, and 2.4 assists a game. Now, the Nets were terrible, but these numbers are some of the best ever for a rookie NBA player till this day. He set the New Jersey franchise record for most points scored in the season with 1,909. Astonishing numbers. His second season in 1978 was more of the same, but the man got arrested again, but this time for coke possession and driving while drinking. Here's what happened. The cops found a brand new 1979 Corvette in the middle of the road in Brownsville, Brooklyn, one of the worst areas in New York during that time, still running in the middle of the night. The cop tapped on the window and it was freaking Bernard King, slumped over on the freaking steering wheel, knocked out. Bernard woke up, didn't even know where he was. In other words, he was passed out with drugs and alcohol in his system. Now, Bernard says that he wasn't doing hard drugs at the time and does not know how that cocaine got there. Bernard had taken his alcohol and drug addiction to a whole nother level when he got to the NBA. The following day, he went missing. He didn't show up to the Nets practice and did not attend the women's basketball event that he was supposed to be at. His mom, coaches, nor agent had heard from him, but actually, he just locked himself in his condo, ignored all phone calls, and cried due to feeling ashamed. 3 days later, he turns back up and drops 41 points on the Knicks. He was just that great of a talent. Keep in mind, guys, that at this time, the NBA was dealing with a massive drug problem in the NBA, which also coincides with the drug epidemic at the time. It is estimated that more than 70% of the league was doing hard drugs throughout the late 70s to the late 80s, and the league was in free fall. Players like Bernard were once in a generation, so him going through this was unfortunately accepted due to the fact that he brought it on the court. But things had gotten so bad for him that the Nets requested that he see a psychologist to figure out what the problem was. He was partying every day, drinking every day and with a different woman all the time, and his life was spiraling. This man went to one therapy session and that was it. At the start of his third season, after coming into camp out of shape and still partying and drinking all night, he was traded to the Utah Jazz. The Nats simply had enough. His time in Utah saw his numbers dip to only 9.3 points a game, 4.6 rebounds, and 2.7 assists, and he was only getting 22 minutes a game. Why, you ask? Let's talk about it. This man got arrested again on January 1st, 1980 for sexual assault and sodomy of a woman. Here's what the police report says. A 25-year-old woman called police and complained that she had been forced to perform sexual acts multiple times throughout an entire afternoon. And it wasn't just him. There were multiple men. She had to wait until they fell asleep, then she called the cops. Cops couldn't even wake this dude out of his sleep because he was out cold and they had to call the paramedics. He is then suspended by the Utah Jazz on January 3rd. Bernard was charged with 5 felony forcible sexual assault charges, 3 for sodomy, and 2 for forced sexual abuse, facing up to 10 years in prison. This is serious. He took 6 lie detector tests and passed all of them. But get this, he only passed the lie detector test because it was about whether or not he had recollection of what happened that night. Simply put, he was drunk and high out of his mind. He blacked out. He was able to plead down because of this and was charged with 1 count of attempted forcible sexual assault. In other words, he got away with this too. But hold on, we are not done quite yet. There are rumors out there that say that King was also a pusher, a notorious pusher, and he was applying drugs to his teammates on the Utah Jazz, including one of his teammates who died in 1980 after a car accident, Terry Furlow. He was discovered with cocaine in his bloodstream after he had passed. He then checked himself into a 6-week rehabilitation program, acknowledging that he had a problem. Later that year, he's traded again, this time to the Golden State Warriors. The Jazz wanted nothing to do with this dude's antics, and rightfully so. But he also wanted to go to Golden State after forming a great relationship with the head coach, Al Attles. He got a fresh start with the Warriors, winning Comeback Player of the Year and upping his average back to normalcy. But in the 1982-1983 season, he gets traded yet again, this time to the New York Knicks. And this is where he really came to be the Hall of Famer that he would eventually turn out to be. I mean, absolutely dominated the 4 years that he was with the Knicks, and 1 year he averaged almost 33 points a game. His tenure there is also where he got his nickname, the Texas Massacre, because he dropped back-to-back 50-point games against the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks. As his career moves forward, he's still putting up gaudy, eye-popping numbers even after he blew out his knee. He eventually got traded to the Washington Wizards in 1987, averaging no less than 17.2 points a game and as high as 28.4 points a game at the end of his career. In 1992, after taking a year off due to injuries, he retires with the New Jersey Nets. And now that his career is over and he has made over $10 million during his playing career, he can sit back, relax, and enjoy retirement, right? Wrong. We got more. In 1994, Bernard King is arrested yet again for assaulting another woman. He allegedly grabbed her around the neck and swung her around his apartment. Once again, he was drunk out of his mind, asleep when the police arrived at his apartment to arrest him. It doesn't stop there, folks. In 2004, he was hired by Bruce Ratner to do PR on his campaign to moving the Nets back to New York. He gets arrested for beating his wife, Shauna, black and blue. Cops showed up at their location after receiving a call from a neighbor of a loud, disturbing noise and found Shauna on the ground with cuts and a swollen face, bruised up and trembling. He was charged with 3 counts of assault and 1 count of harassment. He got away yet again on charges because his wife decides not to press charges. This dude has gotten extremely lucky his entire life simply due to the fact that he has not gotten in trouble not one time, not once, out of all of the charges that he's racked up. Bernard has seemingly kept himself clean from his vices that plagued him since he was at the University of Tennessee and has been praised lately for his play on the court. Hopefully he can continue to keep himself on the straight and narrow during his latter years. And that concludes this episode of Sports Scandals. Please continue to subscribe. Please like. Please continue to support your boy. I thank you guys for all the love that I've gotten on my videos. There's more where this has came from. Again, if there's anybody y'all want to see me do, please put it in the comments. And I thank y'all. Over and out.
I'm off ahead, so I guess I'm labeled a headhunter. Throw me on the verse and I promise you'll probably last longer. Moving through the masses, I'm crashing the main circuit. Too bad cause I had the plans to be modest, remain closer.